What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gooner channel. And I'm not going to talk about Arsenal transfer news today or upcoming friendlies or anything to do with our beloved Arsenal. Because as an England fan, there's only one thing really that's occupying my thoughts today since yesterday's performance in the final. And that is the question, what next for Gareth Southgate? Is he the man to lead us into another tournament? Or is it time to make a change? Has he finally shown himself as somebody who isn't going to be able to get us over the line? And if you're watching this video expecting me to have all the answers in terms of what I think should happen, to make a cogent case for him going or one for him staying, I'm afraid I'm just not there yet. I'm asking you. I want to take a look at how we got where we are now, because the narrative is all about how far Gareth Southgate has taken us from that nadir of losing to Iceland in 2016. And it was a low point, unquestionably a low point. I mean, it's a low point when the manager in the press conference after the game resigns. You know it hasn't gone particularly well. Last 16 game against Iceland, everyone expecting us to cruise through to a quarterfinal match with France, and it just didn't happen. A team that just didn't look like it had enough about it throughout that game against Iceland, short of ideas. But I mean, if you really want to talk about disappointment, I'm going all the way back to Brazil 2014, where I don't remember being particularly optimistic, in fairness, but when you lose your first two group games in a World Cup and you're out before you played your third group game, losing as we did to Italy and Uruguay 2-1 before even facing Costa Rica, and then you're so abject you can't even beat Costa Rica at that point. I mean, that's a Scottish performance in a World Cup. That was a low point. You do look back at it and wonder how Roy Hodgson stayed in charge. But you mustn't overlook the fact that in the qualification for Euro 2016, we played 10, won 10, scored 31, conceded 3. It was a perfect record. Look, I know that we had a very easy qualification group, but that's still a decent achievement. Should give you hope. And when Roy Hodgson resigns, as he did after that match, and we're all left wondering what the hell happened, the future does not exactly look bright. In comes Sam Allardyce, which in of itself didn't fill me with confidence. I don't know about you. But perhaps Sam Allardyce would have been the man to totally transform English football, to take us into a new era, to capitalise on the host of outstanding world-class players that were to come. We'll never know. We'll never know because he made a complete twit of himself, didn't he? I mean, that's the kindest way I can put it. So when Gareth Southgate did come in, I did kind of think of him as basically a caretaker manager. We needed someone to come in and steady the ship. And so I think I can't have been the only one who was hugely surprised to see that we actually got to the semi-final of 2018. From that low place of not being able to win a single game 4 years before, to making it into a semi-final against Croatia. A team that, look, I've lived through my disappointing games against Croatia, failing to qualify for Euro 2008, when Steve McLaren, the now infamous Wally with a brolly, watched us play a horrible game at Wembley where, having levelled it to 2-2, we conceded a third goal, which meant we didn't qualify. And Russia and Croatia took 2 places in our qualifying group. Horrible. Low points. But you fancied us to beat Croatia. Well, I did anyway. And when we played the kind of damp squib of that semi-final, you were left feeling like what might have been. But at the same time, you had to acknowledge that progress was made. Qualifying us then for Euro 2020, we were all waiting to see what would happen. Obviously, we had to wait an extra year, but we got to the final of that tournament. The final, in front of a home crowd, could not have started any better. We scored in the first 2 minutes of that game, and then didn't have another shot on target for the next 118 minutes and lost it on penalties. Of course, people always point at the person who misses a penalty. And Saka took a lot of flack. Rashford, Sancho, not so much, for reasons I don't fully understand. But still, a final, you know? Like, only one man had ever taken England to a final before, and you felt like Gareth Southgate, how close we'd come. If you lose on penalties, you think what might have been. And, of course, Going into the World Cup 22, it was another one of those where there was optimism, but I don't think we'd gotten carried away. Losing as we did to France was painful in the quarter-final, but France are an excellent team. And there's no shame in losing to an excellent team. And again, we were so close. If Harry Kane had scored the penalty in the 84th minute, we'd have tied. Who knows what might have happened? But going into this tournament, and look, not just because we didn't seem to know who our first 11 was. We didn't seem to know what our formation was going to be. There was a real lack of belief going into this tournament. And I thought maybe that's the answer. I had a similar lack of belief going into 1990, and that turned out pretty well. The opening game against Serbia and all of the concerns around Southgate manifested. We were playing players in strange positions. Formation didn't really work. You tried Trent Alexander-Arnold. Lots of things were being tried that should probably have been worked out before the tournament. And Harry Kane lacklustre up front. But we won. We won the game 1-0. And in the end, you think, well, that's not true of England teams usually. We don't usually win our opening game. So, hallelujah. Then the goal that Kane scored against Denmark had me thinking maybe I need to eat some humble pie here. I'd said at the outset of the tournament I didn't rate Kane. I was laughed at because everyone said, well, you're an Arsenal fan. So of course you don't like Kane. I'm also a Bayern fan and don't like Harry Kane. And everyone will tell you, no, he scored a hatful of goals. He has, but when it really matters, he doesn't score the goals. In the games against the teams, it really matters he didn't score the goals. And he'd only scored 4 goals in open play from the middle of March. So his form had dipped. Thomas Tuchel had talked about his injuries. Anyway, I don't want to spend too long talking about Harry Kane because this is about Gareth Southgate. It was Southgate's decision to play Kane. And as I said, when he scored against Denmark, I was thinking, I'm wrong here. The floodgates will open. We'll beat Denmark. We'll have qualified. We can change the squad up for the third game. And then, of course, we did in England. We scored and we sat back. We allowed them into the game. And although they didn't batter us, they didn't outplay us, but they were the better team on the day. And then there was this kind of England camp, Fortress England camp. People saying, you criticised us, but we've qualified. You know, we've done enough. And they were critical of us for being critical of them because they're playing so boringly. There's no cohesion, lots of sideways, lateral passes, back passes. A goalkeeper playing as if it was the 1970s, lumping balls up, basically giving the ball away every time he kicked it. And criticising that seemed to irk the players who wanted to be immune from that criticism, but who didn't demonstrate on the pitch against Slovenia that we were wrong. But again, you know, we're through. We're through and we topped the group, so we wouldn't have to go on a difficult side that had France and Portugal and Germany and Spain on it. And we all knew at that point, if we'd gone on that side of there's no chance of making a final. I think that's been proven now, but perhaps we would have beaten Germany or France. Perhaps we would have beaten Portugal. They had their own problems with playing a player up front that wasn't mobile enough. But in any case, avoiding Spain was important because they started the tournament, played with verve and flair and passion and purpose. But we got through to Slovakia, and once again, just like in 2016, everybody was looking ahead. You know, after this, do we play? And then that game happened, and the story of this tournament has been, it felt that we were winning games in spite of our tactics. The moments of brilliance by individuals were winning us games. Bellingham's header in the first game, great moment. Charging into the box to get on a header. The game against Slovakia, Bellingham again with an overhead kick. And after the match, people said, we practiced long throws. And you do think, well, you practiced long throws so that Bellingham could bicycle kick it in from the edge. But don't practice that. Perhaps practice passing it to each other. But it was a moment of brilliance. Then in the game against Switzerland, again, a goal down before we started playing. And a moment of brilliance by Bukayo Saka that got us to a penalty shootout. And in that penalty shootout, we'd put to bed the ghosts of the past. One thing you have to give Gareth Southgate credit for is that he's got us taking penalties well. But the Southgate penalty that we still talk about from 96 that he missed, I think it's worth remembering. The first 5 penalties we took in that shootout all went in. So, we have had good penalty shootouts before, is what I'm saying. We famously beat Spain in 96 in a penalty shootout, which was really unfortunate. And in a sense, we kind of owed Spain one, because in that game in 96 against Spain, they had 2 goals ruled offside that probably weren't. At least one of them definitely wasn't. And they had a penalty denied. In fact, they were booked for diving when it was clearly a penalty. So we rode our luck in 96 to get to Germany, and our luck ran out. But this time, this tournament, it felt like we'd gone into it without a clear idea of what our formation should be. We didn't have a left back. We put Shaw in there, although he wasn't fit. And lots of things about this tournament just did not feel well planned or well constructed. But the most annoying thing about it was that we didn't seem to know how to pass vertically forward, how to play quickly. And part of that was that we were carrying Kane up front. In the game against Holland, when he finally took Kane off, we introduced Palmer and we introduced Watkins, things changed and we had that moment. And again, it's a good pass, it's a good goal, it's a moment by a player in what is otherwise a game really devoid of obvious tactical strategy. But we're through to the final. And here it is. Going into that final, you allow yourself a little hope. On paper, our team is as good as Spain's. Half-time 0-0 and Rodri comes off. Now, without arguably, well, maybe he isn't the best player in the world, but he's in the conversation. Rodri is such an important player. And yet, what happens? We're still sitting back. We're still trying to absorb pressure without any outlet for a counter-attack. And they score. And then he makes changes. In the 61st minute, 61 minutes too late for me. But Harry Kane comes off. And the goal by Palmer, well, you know what? Like it's mad to think that at the start of the season, he scored that beauty against us in the Charity Shield. Community Shield. And I remember thinking, that's a good day for him. But he hasn't stopped. That mentality, that ice-cold mentality, I just don't know how to describe how good he seems on a pitch when it comes to keeping the ball and keeping your nerve. And how did he not get more game time? But that's wise after the event. I'm looking now at this fact that Gareth Southgate took us to that final and did the same things. Going into the match, all the pundits, of course, were saying, you can't drop Harry Kane, you can't drop Harry Kane. Whereas the most of the rest of us were saying, you could probably drop Harry Kane now. He's not fit, or if he is fit, he's not fitting this system. I made a prediction before the Dutch game that I would drop Harry Kane because he's likely to touch the ball 26 times, stay too close to the centre circle, and not have a shot on target. And I'm not a fortune teller. I'm just looking at data. That's what always happens in semi-finals and finals when Harry Kane plays. Harry Kane has never won anything for a reason. He lacks the confidence of a big game player. And listening to him talk about the game afterwards just made me a little bit frustrated. You know, we tried really hard. And it's just, at a certain point, you need a little bit more killer instinct. I wanted to see him a little bit more disheartened, disappointed, or just dead on his feet. It's not Harry Kane's fault. We didn't win. Harry Kane, it seems to me, was telling people that he was all right when he was suffering from a back injury. It's hard to diagnose back injuries. At a point, you do have to take a player's word for it. But for me, that's the manager's job. To say, look, Harry, I know you're saying you're fit, but you haven't been playing like you're fit, and I don't think we need you in the final. Maybe we'll bring you on if we need a goal, because that's what you do. And a fit Harry Kane, when you need a goal, might throw himself around a little bit. But we didn't see that in the entire tournament. Now, it must seem like, from everything I'm saying, I'm absolutely 100% in favour of Gareth Southgate going. I don't know if it will be Gareth Southgate's decision. He's got a contract till December. It seems like an odd time to have a contract. I mean, he's not going to play a few qualifying games and then be replaced. But I wonder what's going through his head today. Because I'm not critical of Gareth Southgate, and here's why. I think he's done his best. I think he's represented his country. He's given everything he can. That winning tournaments at international level is an elite level achievement, and not everyone can do that. Not everyone has the courage to drop players like Jimmy Greaves before a final. Not everyone has the inspiring personality that gets players to believe when it seems hopeless, to inspire them with those rousing words and send them out on their way. Not everyone can do that, but I think he talked about this with alacrity during the tournament, said that it's hard when you give so much for your country and all you get in return is criticism. That is the job, though. We are incredibly demanding as fans for no reason other than the fact that we do, and you are carrying the burden of the fact that nobody before you has been successful. His achievements are unsurpassed in getting to finals. First England manager to get us to a final on foreign soil. We all know that. Back-to-back finals? Of course, that's never happened before. Who knows? If that second Spain goal had been a fraction of an inch the other way, it might have been offside and we might have got to penalties and we might have won it on a penalty shootout, and then everyone would be building statues of Southgate. That's how close the margin is. That's how close he came. So I'm not angry with Gareth Southgate. I don't feel like he's let his country down. He's certainly done everything he knew how to do. And I expect to some degree this will be his decision. And maybe he'd already decided going into this tournament that he couldn't stand doing it ever again. Maybe he'd already decided going into this tournament that he'd had enough. Personally, the biggest reason I'm not sure we should be thinking about replacing Gareth Southgate is because, for all the talk of this is as far as he can take us, who is there to replace him? Now, if the conversation is sack Southgate, bring in Pep Guardiola, no question about it. Sign me up on the dotted line. I said we should sack him before this tournament and bring in Jose Mourinho, because with the players at our disposal, I know I'm being a little bit silly there because it's not like Jose Mourinho plays attacking, flair-filled football, but he does win games. Imagine if Pep had been drafted in to replace Gareth Southgate. We made him do some sort of English national service. If you're going to manage in this country, you have to manage England. Imagine what Pep does with these players. These players who on paper are every bit as good as the players Spain are putting up. The world is talking about Lamine Yamal, and rightly so. But we have our own players as good as that. All right, maybe not quite as good as that, but he's 17. As good as him now. Rodri wasn't on the pitch, but he is, I think, the best player in his position in the world. Arguably one of the best players in the world anyway. But when I look at who the likeliest replacements are, there's speculation that Jurgen Klopp might come in and do it. He's not going to do it. He's literally just retired, right? You don't retire and come out of retirement, unless you're Roy Hodgson. I don't think we could talk Klopp into doing it. So you know who the number one... So you know who's the favourite with the bookies to replace Gareth Southgate? Graham Potter. You might not feel confident that Gareth Southgate can improve on getting us to a final. But do you think Graham Potter gets us to a final? Graham Potter. Brighton don't want him back. After him, it's Eddie Howe. No problem with Eddie Howe. He's a great guy. He's done a really good job. But is he that elite level manager that takes these superstars? And Newcastle had a great season, then a very bad season. That's not a criticism of him. I just think it's a very tough job they're doing. Maybe who would you pick to replace Gareth Southgate? Because just like the people who criticise Arteta don't have anyone else lined up, if it's Southgate or Graham Potter, I'm going Southgate. But there's a part of me as well that kind of feels like, this is a decision that Southgate will make, and I think that he loves this country too much to carry on doing it. Reminds me a little bit of when Kevin Keegan stood down because he said, I'm just not up to it. So that's where I think we're at. I want to hear from you. Of course I do. I want you to persuade me. Persuade me who I'm missing. You guys are brilliant at letting me know. You guys have brilliant insight in this, and we're all sad and suffering, and we all have to find a future to be hopeful about. You look at these players and you think, we could win a World Cup. But do you feel like that? Because I don't at the moment. And with Graham Potter in charge, I absolutely don't. So Southgate, if you're watching this, all I really have to say to you is thank you. You may not have delivered what I wanted, but I will never doubt that you gave your very best in trying to do so. And you deserve my respect and my appreciation for that, for all that you've done for England in taking us to finals and giving me that last day of the tournament to enjoy. Put a bottle of champagne on ice. Okay, I didn't end up drinking it, but at least I put it on ice. At least you got me there. We need one more final from you where you make amends for some of the silly things you've done. Maybe bring in somebody as an assistant who's a tactical genius, and your job can be getting the players in the right mood to play well, and somebody else can be in charge of telling them where they're supposed to be, because I don't think that's your strength. But I love you for trying. Anyway, that's been my take on whether Gareth Southgate should stay and go, and I can't wait to hear yours. And until I see you again, well, be lucky. Lots of love.